Meet Damien Mander, aka the Vegan Sniper. Damien is an ex-Special Forces military sniper who now uses his advanced combat skills to fight against poachers in rural Africa. He's the founder of the International Anti-Poaching Foundation, which provides employment and training to teams of mainly rural African women and gives them the skills they need to fight the poachers and defend the animals. Damien's inspirational story was featured in Netflix's The Game Changers documentary, and he's also given an incredibly inspirational TED Talk, which has been viewed by almost 500,000 people. Maybe today, Damien's story will inspire you too. Join me now as we welcome Damien Mander to the channel. Damien, welcome.
Dave, how are you, buddy?
All good, mate. All good. Great to have you here. Whoop, just lost my mic for a minute. There we go. It's better. Great to have you here, mate. How did you like the intro? Was it accurate for you? Was it good for you?
Yeah, mate. I love watching videos of myself, mate. So yeah, thanks for putting that together in your spare time.
Yeah, combined all the best shots I could find and put them all together with some inspirational music.
I've got a couple of personal favorites, mate. I'll send you through in a
nice
file afterwards, mate. Yeah.
You can have that. I'll send you a copy of this one as well. You can add it to the collection. No, awesome to have you here. I guess I gave a quick overview of your story then, but it doesn't do it any justice. So I think a great place to start would be like your beginnings, because as I mentioned you're coming from a military background, elite level military background. So I guess we could kick off with that at the beginning of your story. How does a young man in Australia end up becoming an elite military sniper? What path did you take to go down that road?
I grew up in the water, and I still like to think I've got salt water running through my veins. I love it. I miss it. I'm in Zimbabwe. I'm landlocked. So it's about a 14-hour drive to the nearest ocean here. But as a kid that grew up in, just submerged in water, the ultimate job is to be a Navy diver. And I joined the Navy at the age of 19. Sort of started going off down the wrong track in life, I suppose. A lot of the friends that I'd grown up with had become involved with drugs, and not only using them but selling them. And I'd sort of fallen into step with that. And it was an easy way to make a quick buck as a kid.
Right.
It's easier than working for money. I suppose the military was just very fortuitous, that me and that met at the right time. And I always say the military is the sort of place you can do as much or as little as you want. You can sit there and do the same job for the next 30 years, or you can go off and do a PhD, or you can go and join Special Forces. I went on to become a Navy clearance diver, which it's Australia's closest. When you encompass all the roles that we do, it would be our closest version to what the Americans would refer to as a SEAL, particularly with the black roles counterterrorism work that we do. September 11 changing the world for a lot of people also changed the world for me. The Australian government formed what they termed the first and last resort for a terrorist attack on home soil, and that was called Tactical Assault Group East. And I went in there, naturally being a diver, went across into water platoon. It was a very small unit, less than 60 operators, in total making up three platoons, land, water and sniper. And I'd only been there for a few days, and I was told I was going to do the only job you can't ask to do, you're told you're doing it, and that was to become a sniper.
Right. Wow. That's pretty intense. There's a lot of pressure at the time, but you were into it, right? Was it like a dream for you at the time, or was it a burden for you to do that? Like how were you feeling when that kind of landed on your lap?
Yeah, I mean, I never thought of it, and probably even to what I'm doing today, it never seems like work. Today has much more purpose for me, but again, I don't wake up in the morning and go, oh, shit, I've got to go to the office, go to work. And it was the same in the military. I'm doing shit in real life that kids can't even do on a fucking PlayStation. And I'm getting paid, Australian military was paid very well.
Right.
So sort of it was hard to sort of classify, this boyhood dream as anything but just living out a fantasy,
Right.
So yeah, it was cool. And you're part of the most elite boys club in the world, Special Operations.
Yeah, I get it. And I'm glad you mentioned that as well. It's that because I can imagine in this world, and this is obviously what we're going to get into for most of the chat today, is I can't imagine this world having much compassion or kind of empathy for, for animals, right? I can't imagine this being like in this, like you said, elite boys club. I can't imagine anyone sitting down and discussing like, hey, guys, I really love animals. I think we should, not eat them or go and save them or go and help them. So, I mean, maybe I'm
Yeah,
wrong. Maybe that's what you were talking about, but I can't
yeah,
imagine that was how it was. So how did that go for you then? How did you go from that,
yeah.
such a, hardcore elite kind of military club, boys club, as you said, to changing the way you see animals? Like, was there a specific moment that just made you go, wait a minute, I'm going to really think about this and do something for animals?
Yeah, look, I mean, like the background I came from, I mean, it's sort of written on my chest, seek and destroy.
Yeah.
It's that was the sort of mindset that we had in the military, and we're basically a bunch of surgical sledgehammers,
Right.
and then that was our job, our purpose, and I think purpose is one of the most elusive things in life. And when you're with this tight knit group of highly trained uh, soldiers, you've got this brotherhood around you, and you've got the mission. And then when that stops, it's very hard to try and figure out the what next. There's not too many jobs for a sniper in the local newspaper. When you come back home and you're sitting there, you're trained to shoot someone from a mile away, and you expect to go home and flip burgers or drive an Uber
Right.
and reintegrate back into society. And society sometimes doesn't know how to accept us back in, either at a family or a personal level. You go off and fight the arguments of old men, and then governments have got to be ready to pick up the pieces when kids come back home. I was fortunate, was able, had an opportunity to travel to Africa. I heard about anti-poaching and went over there and just had a look at what was going on, and was inspired by the work of rangers and the plight of animals. I just come from working within a $600 billion a year annual defense budget in Iraq. We were looking after the resources, commercial resources in the ground and dotted lines on a map. And here we had people basically risking their life every day to try and protect nature. And I was over there really not looking for a cause, but looking for a fight. And I was trying to have an adventure on the back end of the hard work of rangers, and that sort of made me reflect on who I was, which I wasn't happy with what I saw internally. And the other thing was seeing the plight of animals, and that's 3 years in Iraq will give you a different lens through which to see the world. And I was just at a time in my life I was ready to absorb something different, or look at something in a different perspective.
Right. Right. That's pretty deep, mate. Yeah. So like, just to make sure I understood that properly, you went out there with the idea of like, I don't know, an adventure, like having fun, and actually what happened is you gained like respect for these people, and just that kind of inspired you to go and help them instead, right? Is that my understanding? That's how it went?
Yeah. I went there. Literally, it was going to be a 6-month adventure for me, running around the
Right.
bush and
Yeah.
this sort of romantic. Hey, mate, I got to have a shower. That's what the problem is. I've just got these
Flies
flies
coming for you.
all over. It's like being back home in Australia, mate. I need one of those hats with the little corks hanging around.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I went over just went over to try and have this adventure, really. And then
Right.
sort of when you get into these units, start working with these rangers, and you realize there's people that have given up their whole life for this. And there's me trying to fulfill my next set of pictures for social media. And
Right.
it's like I didn't join the military to serve my country. I did it for adventure. I didn't go to Iraq to help the situation there. I went there to make money, and I came to Africa not really looking for a situation to help, but rather just to have that next adventure. And I suppose we're all a product of our past, and I suppose being able to interrogate what that history looks like and how it maps our own path forward, I think is probably one of the most important processes of life. I work in nature conservation. Nature's had the luxury of billions of years to evolve, and evolution is the cutting away of the bits that don't work and the retention of the bits that do. And there's no there's no predetermined path in evolution. It takes its own path based on what is working best and what we allow to remain. And as humans, we don't have billions of years. We have a handful of decades at best to try and make the most of our lives. I don't believe in anything before this life, and there's no proof for me of anything after this life. This is it, the one shot we have to make us to make our mark and do as much as we can in the short time we had. I was just researching for a post a few years ago. I wanted to find out what the mathematical odds of us being us are. You being you and me being me, us being born as who we are. And the actual odds is 400 trillion to 1.
Right.
And and like being born who we are is just a gift as it is. Like it's the fucking jackpot. We won it. And some people want to waste that. Most people want to waste it. Again, the most elusive thing is purpose. What's your purpose? What are you doing? What are you here for?
Right. And is this kind of what, because I mean, a lot of often, I don't know too much about this, but I would assume a lot of people go from people with ambition anyway would go from what you were doing, like military, into their own kind of business, maybe like private security or something like that, because they have those skills. But this, I guess the reason you didn't do that is as you've said, you found there's a true purpose here, right? In what you're doing. It's you're saving animals, you're trying to save the planet, you're trying to, these are things that are way more important than money, right? And money or like, career success, which is, which those things in the grand scheme. Now you've just said that, the chances of us being born and being money and things like that don't seem anywhere near as important as they did, 5 minutes ago, right? It's
the important things in life are not things, mate. At least not for me, anyway. It's the important things are relationships and actions, and I mean, I'm not sitting here expecting everyone to go and move to Africa and sell up everything they got and start up a charity and give up the rest of their life. And I think I got asked this a few months ago in another podcast. I said, Damien, what do you think the purpose of life is? I was like, fuck, it's a pretty heavy question. I thought about it. I'd never actually thought about it. I thought, what, the purpose of life is to have a good time, because we always say, we want to be happy. It doesn't matter what we're doing, whether we're trying to be a good parent, whether we're trying to run a good organization or do good work for animals or be a good soldier or whatever it is. If we're doing it right, it feels good and it makes us happy. The only rule to all of that is don't be an asshole in the process. Don't step on other people and other beings in the process. And doing good things doesn't give us a credit to do bad things. So, that to boil my life philosophy down to that is I want to have a good time and enjoy what I'm doing in being impactful in making the world a better place. And I don't want to be an asshole in the process. And it's as simple as that.
And I like the way you put it, because I always say that as well. Like I talk about, don't be a selfish asshole. That's how one of the things I say about the reason to go vegan, right? Is don't be a selfish asshole. You don't need to do this. So, don't be like that. Right. And have you, I mean, obviously you are talking about the animals, you are, publicly defending them, and you've set up your charity to defend them, and you are vegan to defend them. But your background, as you've just said, it came from this like elite boys club. It came from like military. So I guess you still have friends and people in that world. I mean, what do they think about your new kind of path? Have you ever had anyone, for example, like, I don't know, trying to make out that you're like a pussy or whatever because you care about animals? This is quite a common thing that happens to vegans, right? And have you had that? And how have you kind of handled that when people have come at you with that?
I definitely don't get like you might be weaker or that sort of thing. I get the the animal or the hippie, the bloody the grass muncher, whatever it may be. But all that, but I got the perfect comeback to that, and it was the interrogation that I used on my own self as part of my process of changing. After 3 years of working in conservation, going out protecting one group of animals, coming home at night and cooking another group, and just saying, I was being a hypocrite, and I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm an alpha male. Now, as an alpha, our roles in society should be to protect the vulnerable and to stand up for those that can't defend themselves. and animals would sit at the top of the list in terms of vulnerability. Equally with other groups, but in terms of volume, in the billions that we exploit each year. And animals who do not want a car, a paycheck, a bigger house, a fancy suit, or anything else other than to live their life. And we as a species continually take that away from them. And so for me as an alpha, I not only do not want to exploit that vulnerability in something that cannot defend itself, I do not want to pay some other fucker to do it for me. And that's just me. And you know what? Humans in general are masters at coming up with excuses to convince yourself of something that's convenient. This flexible morality, and I was no exception. Fantastic excuses. Essentially, I can sit here and bullshit you all day long, Dave, but I cannot bullshit myself, mate, and that's all that matters.
Definitely, mate. I can't think of anything. People. I don't know where this idea. Well, I do know where it came from. It's industry manipulation and indoctrination.
Yeah.
But telling people that it's manly to go and kill animals that literally have no defense against you at all, or even pay someone to breed them into confined space and kill them and put them on a plate. That's apparently that's what an alpha does. That's a manly thing to do. It's madness, right?
Mental. Mate, I was the same. Like I used to. When we'd go out with the lads, I would make a point of making sure my steak was cooked blue, like literally this big slab of meat, just seared on both sides, and this big red bloody thing would come out. And that was, another way, similar to, in a similar mindset to me hunting as a teenager and trying to gain some form of primal respect from my peers, and as a form of desperation at my most pathetic, I will say, in hindsight now. And I can speak on behalf of that demographic because I came from 180 degrees from where I sit today. So I know the mindset of the person that I used to be, because that's where I came from. And I know the mindset of sitting down there and say, I'm going to have this big steak and to be a man. And ultimately, it's far more. It's far tougher to stand up for those that are not going to do the standing up for themselves. And mate, it's like whether you're a street fighter or a scholar, nobody wants to be fooled or taken the piss out of, mate. And we all had the piss taken out of us. Okay, we all got marketed from a very young age. Our grandparents got marketed that the meat and the dairy industry was part of what would make up a nutritional and healthy diet for us. It's the same marketing campaigns, the same agencies, the same tactics, the same laws and the same regulations that propped up the tobacco industry. Okay, we've been taken the piss out of for decades. And so people shouldn't feel ashamed of being a product of society. What we should be ashamed of is knowing the truth and knowing the facts and not taking action.
Exactly. Knowing it and ignoring it is definitely worse than not knowing it, right? Or knowing it and trying to make excuses like most people unfortunately do, and that why people like me and you need to exist and get out there and talk. Basically, if everyone was logical and rational, we'd have a vegan world for the majority, wouldn't we? At least in the West, at least I'd say, where it's I guess it's definitely for the majority of people, it's absolutely something they can do quite easily. We'd have that, but unfortunately, no. People being illogical and irrational takes precedence, right?
Well, it's the ability that people retain to partition their conscience and to say, I know that what I'm doing here is wrong, and to be able to make excuses that allows themselves to justify that action in their own head to a certain point that they can carry on with that. And look, if you just do enough research, just open up some links and stare at some of the videos, go out and see what happens in real life to these animals. And I mean, an animal, whether it's a rhino, an elephant, or a chicken or a cow, it shares the same capacity to suffer. And the only difference in the capacity of each of those animals to suffer is the difference we create and allow to be accepted in our own minds. And as I said in my talk previously, suffering is suffering, and murder is murder. And the more helpless the victim, the more horrific the crime.
Absolutely. And I was going to actually, I had that quote lined up for you actually, and I wanted to repeat that, but there was another one actually
I'm stealing
that
your
was,
material, Dave. Sorry, buddy.
yeah, that was because you got in that TED talk. I mean, that I rewatched recently, your TED talk, which was amazing, by the way. So well written, so well executed. There was a few quotes that I took out of that were just like, wow, we need to talk about that. And the other one that I wanted to mention, that which I thought was brilliant, you're talking about yourself, but I think it applies to all these people that we're referring to here, about being a slave to your habits and having a cold shoulder to your conscience. I think that that's about the most simple and eloquent way of putting it that I've ever seen, to be honest. It's so to the point and so simple, and I really hope, you know, that I hope people hear that quote and think about that, really think about that. You're being a slave to your habits, and you're giving your conscience the cold shoulder. And I don't think we even focus on conscience that much anymore recently. I talk about empathy and compassion, but yeah, you are right. It is the conscience that's being ignored, because everybody has that in the back of their head, a little voice telling them like, hey, you know, these animals, you know, this is dead animal, like, but they ignore it, don't they? They push it down and say, well, everyone's doing it and it's manly and
Yeah.
I need protein, and this is where all the BS comes up, right?
I mean, we humans are. I mean, we are constantly bad fuckers. We're trying to take shortcuts. We're trying to do this. We're trying to do that, and everything that we do in life. And our conscience is the only good part that's there, constantly telling us, "Fucking hey, this from a different angle, from someone else's perspective," or to have that empathy. So that is the constant that we have to keep listening to.
Definitely. You cut out a minute there, but I think I got there was a little bit
Yeah.
in between that we lost, but I think it came through. The point came through. But let's talk about the foundation that you set up, International Anti-Poaching Foundation. So you set this up it's in Zimbabwe, right? Correctly? Is that your home base? Or you work across rural Africa, don't you? Though, like, but the
So we set up here in October in 2009, initially with myself going out working as a service provider, so going out providing training to other anti-poaching units. Over the years, we scaled up and started providing those services, you know, across the region, across Southern and East Africa, and then you know, from where we are, you know, where we were in the beginning, me arriving here literally with I didn't even have a check-in bag when I moved to Africa. It was carry-on luggage and a set of boots. And from being there to now, you know, as an organisation having 270 staff, having trained and deployed rangers that help protect almost 20 million acres of wilderness across the continent. It's been one hell of a journey.
yeah, it's pretty amazing. And what do they, like you say, the training, right? About like that's you were training them on what exactly though? Like what are they? What is like a day-to-day kind of job for one of these rangers, and what have you trained them to do? Yeah.
So there's been a whole evolution in the organisation over the past 12 years, and when I arrived in Africa, conservation was becoming increasingly militarised, and that suited me, having come from this military background. And now you arrive in this situation where all these elephants and rhinos are being poached, and there's ranger teams needing and looking to deploy increasingly a militarized response to the tactics that poachers were using, as small, highly effective units crossing international borders using heavy caliber rifles, automatic weapons to take out an elephant for their tusk or a rhino for their horn. And so I came over. I was a hammer and everything was a nail. And it was very convenient for me to be able to fall into step into that cadence of the industry and where it was going. And over time we evolved. Like, yeah, in a lot of the initial skills that we were teaching rangers still stand true today. We have to train rangers to prepare for the worst case scenario they're going to come up against, and that will be, you know, very similar to what we had in the bush from a soldiering standpoint. However, there is a deep conservation undertone that runs through that. And where we started off as an organization was working from the inside of reserves, going outwards to protect the reserves. And where we've evolved to today as an organization and as our strategy is to be working with the communities, the rural communities from the outside, and basically coming in. So getting the community to a point where they want to protect the reserve because they see the benefits of it, and they see the benefits of us from a social impact standpoint that help with that motivation.
And
Tell me, Dave, how's the camera, mate? It's a bit jumpy my side. Is it
all
cool
right.
coming through?
Yeah, it's a little bit, but it's all right. Yeah, it's. I think I don't know if you're on like something wooden. Sometimes when you move, it moves a bit, but I think it's all right. Yeah.
Oh no, I mean like the stream. It's going on.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant like literally moving. Yeah. No, the stream's fine. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It's all good. So like when you first started over there, I mean, so I've not got experience in doing anything like what you've done, but I've met a few people who've opened up some communities to help local people, like Westerners who've gone over to different countries and opened up, like there's one called Sadhana Forest, operates in Haiti, operates in India, and operates somewhere else. When they set up in India and Haiti, they had a lot of pushback from locals because they were white, right? They were white people coming over, like, we don't need your help, piss off. But what you're doing is you're not just helping, you're trying to get people to literally sign up to go out with guns and fight very dangerous people. So I mean, how did you convince locals to or did you have to convince locals to respect your ideas and to come in and trust you, or how did that all work?
So with how we used to do business was being that service provider. Right. So we would go out to organisations that already had these contracts in place to be protecting, whether it was their area or an area that they were overall contracted to look after or work with the National Parks Department. So we would provide specialist services within that framework, and they were very focused towards species protection, in particular elephant and rhino, because they were the ones that were being targeted in the most aggressive tactics that our militarized response would be most relevant to try and prevent. Over time, we evolved to see, we got to stop just looking at elephant and rhino and the sexy animals, because there's a much bigger picture here. And our actually, to bring it up to 30,000 feet, our future as a civilization is directly intertwined with our willingness to preserve biodiversity. At a time when civilization has been brought to its knees through COVID-19, this pandemic, as a direct result of the way we treat nature, protecting biodiversity at mass is what's most important in terms of the greatest self-regulating system this planet has, which is nature. It's something that's had billions of years to refine. And so we stopped looking at elephant and rhino. We said, well, okay, we need to look at the whole picture. And if we're looking at the whole picture, then the elephants and rhinos are going to be fine because they're part of the whole picture. Mm-hmm. And then we stopped looking at being a service provider as an organization, going out and working in other people's land, and we started going in and doing contracts with local Indigenous communities to help them empower them to protect their own lands. And our projects now, the contracts that we have with these communities vary in length from 20 to 45 years. So there's a long-term partnership that's unfolding here. And then we stopped looking at parks in particular, and we started looking at how all these parks link together and form these massive landscapes. And that's essentially where we've come to now as an organization, and from this outside looking in approach, from this dealing with the social side first. So we have a number of different initiatives. The first thing we did, so in 2017, we shifted our entire strategy of how we approached wildlife conservation. We had been a very militarized organization that used force. We were operating in some of the most aggressively targeted regions on the continent. One in particular, working on the border of Kruger National Park in Mozambique, home to a third of the world's remaining rhinoceros population. We had 165 personnel with 4 different government departments. We had helicopters, aircraft, canine attack teams, bigger fences and more guns. And we had this ongoing war with the local community. And, we were successful in stopping poachers from coming through there and poaching rhinos, and played a significant role in helping, for the first time in almost a decade, to drive a downturn in rhino poaching numbers, across the world, because that was center stage for rhino poaching on the planet. Yeah. And then just I'd go to bed at night. So at least, we're successful, but this is not the answer. This is not the way forward. We need to find a way to re-engage these communities and come from the outside in, not the inside out. And that was 2017. It was the beginning of Akashinga, which would go on to become the first network of nature reserves in the world to be managed and protected by women. It would completely change the dynamics of conservation, the economics of conservation. Leave me here 4 years after starting that particular program with a very definitive mindset that putting women into the forefront of law enforcement changes the dynamics of society for the better. And this is not something you can go into Chicago and say, hey, listen, we're gonna take all the men out of the operational roles and replace them with women and see what happens. We had a blank canvas. Conservation so underfunded with such little infrastructure in so many areas. We came into an area that had none of that, and we're able to start from scratch and scale this program up. Started with 16 women protecting 90,000 acres. We now have Akashinga as a project, has around 240 staff, 8 different parks that we protect, with a portfolio of 1.4 million acres, and we're currently negotiating another 6 million acres at the moment. So there's a significant scale up that's happened there. We haven't been the ones pushing this program out. It's been other governments and other local communities coming to us and saying, can you come and scale this program into our areas? So these partnerships have become extremely important. So we're going from being, a service provider focused on elephant and rhino to being a land holder focused on biodiversity, and not just biodiversity at a park, but at landscape scale and in direct partnership with local Indigenous communities. That's very much the evolution of the IAPF and where we are at today.
It's an amazing evolution as well. And I think it's great that you noted that in 2017 to make that switch, because obviously look at how it's worked out. It's getting the community involved couldn't have been a better decision really for you. And it's definitely working. And people can see that in the documentary. If you go on YouTube and type in Akashinga, if you search for that, maybe after the stream, obviously not right now, because you're enthralled and you want to stay and watch. So yeah, you could check that out. It's a really short documentary about this team that Damien was just talking about, a team of women who go out and defend the animals against poachers. It's really amazing. And also the teams are all eating plant-based, right? The teams in Akashinga at least, right? So how, yeah. So how, what was that? Sorry.
The gangsters.
So how did that come about? Because I know, well, obviously I know your reason for being vegan. As you said, it doesn't make sense to go out and save animals and then come home and eat another animal. Like it's hypocrisy. But the local diets of people where you're working, firstly, 2 questions. Firstly, do they have a lot of animal products in them anyway? And the second question, how was it to try to convince people to eat this way? Was it difficult, or was it just, did they agree? So a two-part question.
So when we started the program, Akashinga, we also started another a food and nutrition program within that called Back to Black Roots. And that is, so we taught all the staff how to grow their own food. We taught them how to speak about it and understand it from an environmental, a nutritional, and an ethical standpoint. And that was the only food that we served. And we had, it's all backed up with a nutrition plan. And now 4 years later, you have a team of women doing one of the toughest, hardest, most respected jobs, not only on the continent, in the world. They're doing it in one of the most harshest remote locations. They're kicking ass at it, and they're doing it on a plant-based diet. And when someone is living in a city goes, oh, it's too hard or it can't be done, have a look at what these women are doing. And look, for us, the greatest, people get involved with conservation generally for 1 or 2 reasons. We love the environment, we want to protect it, or we have a passion for animals, or a combination of the two. And in that respect, I think conservation should be leading the charge on a plant-based or vegan movement. And people, again, we compartmentalize this as an industry, and the reality is, and we lose funding over this, because I get up and say this at conferences. There's 2 types of conservationists. There's vegans, and there's those that don't want to take their work home. And you can be the hardest working conservationist on the planet, but if we are a part of if funding the meat industry and supporting that system, then we are part of the largest or greatest negative impact on the natural world. Deforestation, which is one of the biggest things we fight as conservationists, the meat industry clearing these areas, not only to put the animals on to graze, but to grow the food to feed them. And then, of course, the animals themselves, are talking like over 100 billion animals a year killed. Here we are running around trying to protect certain populations or protect areas so the networks of populations within those areas can thrive. The simple, we have to go out there and risk our lives. These rangers from the local communities that are motivated to go up and stand up and go out there and be away from their family, in some cases for months on end, and risk their lives to protect animals. Back home, we don't have to do that. The simplest way to protect an animal is don't stick it in your mouth.
Absolutely. It's great that it's so refreshing to hear like a conservationist, someone doing this work who has that strong ethical message, because what is conservation without ethics? What is sustainability without ethics? Like, what is the point? If this is something I talk about a lot, and people say, "Oh, it's sustainable, though. This is sustainable, or this thing." Who cares, right? If we don't have the ethics there, what kind of world do we want to live in? If all we're trying to do is like, okay, yeah, this thing is sustainable, so let's do it without even thinking about whether it's ethical or not. Like, that's not even that. There's no point, right? It's like the foundation isn't set properly.
I mean, it's not like we ask everyone to be motherfucking Teresa here. It's like, please do not go out and kill something that can't defend itself, that is having the greatest negative environmental impact on this planet. I mean, really, that's a no-brainer. Not, it's not a stretch here as a request.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Definitely. And with the teams that you have, right, Akashinga and the other teams as well. So they're eating a fully plant-based diet, doing one of the hardest jobs in the world, as you said, if not the hardest job in the world, at least the most dangerous. And they're smashing it. So what are they eating? I mean, in an average day, I mean, say someone's watching this right now and they're like, all right, Damien, I'm convinced. So what's the warriors diet then, right? Because what they are, they're warriors, right? So what are they eating?
Yeah. So our team is headed up by an amazing woman called Chef Cola, and she has a team of 7 chefs working underneath her. We have 5 acres at our main site, 5 acres of gardens there, and then we've got food coming in from as much as we can get from the local communities, because this is a community-driven program. We try and spend as much of every dollar in those communities as possible. But as much of the food as possible we get from the communities, and then we start outsourcing further and further away. But it's a very healthy whole food plant-based diet, but it's also a very high calorie diet. You've got these women patrolling up to 20 miles a day. So I've just spent 2 months in the United States, and that's why my mindset is very much in the miles and yards space at the moment. So you'll have to forgive me there. But so it's important for them to be able to maintain. Not only the ability to be able to go out and do such an arduous job, but to be able to maintain the tempo. And they may be 2 days into a patrol, and they may find tracks of poachers, and then they may be for the next 2 or 3 days through the bush following these tracks. So, and then they might get to a village or something, and then they've got to carry out an operation, conduct the operation, and get back to base. So these are in some case you would say some of the most elite warriors that we have working out here, and they're doing it field on plants.
And what kind of so on an average day, like I guess it's seasonal, right? But like, where are they getting most of the calories? Like I would guess, but I don't really know what you guys can grow, but I know what plant foods have the most calories. But what I mean, if you don't know exactly, but like what's an idea?
Rice, pasta, the whole array of fruit and veggies, as much as we can grow in these areas, we do. And then again, whatever's seasonal, but it does vary quite a lot. And then also, when rangers are going out on patrol, it will also be dependent on what they can carry. We have huge solar dryers, so they'll dehydrate a lot of their food and then re-prepare it when they're out in their camps.
And I've heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard some people talk about the kind of the diet in rural Africa, like rural parts of Africa and countries in Africa, that the diet is mostly plant-based anyway. Has that been your experience as well? That actually, like, it's, you know, most people are eating a mostly plant-based diet?
So when I first was discussing this program with the women, you know, I had to explain that you know, the origins of a lot of the food systems in Africa, that Africa was largely raised on a plant-based diet with meat reserved in many or majority parts of the continent for traditional or ceremonial purposes. It wasn't like this meat-rich diet. And then over time, this Western influences come in, and we got such huge healthcare issues in so many places: heart disease, diabetes, stroke, cancer. And in many countries where the health system is so inaccessible, the best prevention or medicine we can have is the food that we eat to be able to, you know, stop these people from getting into this situation in the first place. So it's just, you know, it's a part of the program that has become ingrained, and it's something that I'm glad that it's really stuck, because we did try it previously with some other male units that we were working with, but we were already working with them, and then we say, hey, you know, let's try this and see how it goes. And then as opposed to with the women, when we started the program from day one, we just, you know, this is it, this is what we're serving, and this is why we serve it. Everyone's getting fed enough and feeding the right you know, nutritional value food. What they want to do when they go back home is completely up to them. We don't force anyone to be vegan, but what we serve at work is a whole food plant-based diet. Now, the majority of the women, from the questions that we've had independently asked, retain this back at home with their families. So stage 1 of Back to Black Roots is working with the staff. Stage 2 is working with the households. Stage 3 is working with the communities. Stage 4 is building ambassadors. And ironically, the place where this program started, Back to Black Roots started, is in a small town, a small village called Nyamakati. And Nyamakati, Nyama means meat. So Nyamakati, Nyama pot, the meat pot.
Right, really.
Because this is traditionally a very, this is a high yield area for trophy hunters back in the day. And this town was like a center point where all the trophy hunters would come in and conduct their operations.
Right. That's that kind of like a, well, it's a good, sweet irony. It's a good irony, isn't it, that it started there, and now you're undoing the damage, right? And that sounds, I mean, it sounds incredible. I think I didn't know any of this, so it's really cool to hear it. But I think, unfortunately, to some people, this is going to be, it would sound really bad, right? And let me elaborate what I'm trying to say here. There's a big movement right now. Well, not a big movement, but there's a lot of people out there right now, you know, people looking to get offended by everything these days. And one of the things that we're all being told as someone like you or I, white men, is that we're not allowed to comment on these kinds of things, and we're not allowed to talk about these kinds of things. We're especially not allowed to try and talk to people, or they call them people of color, but I don't really like saying that. But anyway, but people who aren't white, you're not allowed to say things. You're not allowed to try and teach things. You're not allowed to. It's not right. Have you ever had any of that crap yourself? And if so, like you know, online and stuff, and if so, like how do you just ignore it, or have you even had it or had to deal with anything like that as being a, you know, white guy going over to Africa and kicking all this off? Which, by the way, I'm you know, I'm fully supportive. I'm just wondering if anyone's ever tried to pull this on you before.
No, absolutely. There's, you know, you still get people that will say it's still this sort of white savior mentality.
Yeah, I should have just said that. Really, that was a quicker way of explaining what I meant.
Yeah, the reality is, you know, we've of the almost several hundred staff that we have here on the continent, there's only 3 foreigners working here as part of what we do. Yes, I'm white. Yes, I'm a male. But you know what? I came over and I invested 100% of what I had into getting this program going, and you know, and I lost everything in the process. I don't come from a particular place of privilege in terms of where I grew up or you know, what I had access to as a kid. I joined the military. I served in some of the hardest units in the world to get into. I started investing in real estate property at a very young age, and I paid off those portfolios by being in war and surviving war. The purpose of the war there is highly debatable. It's not something I'm proud of being a part of. It's not something I'm regretting either. I'm trying to make the best of a shitty situation. All that boils down to, we are a product of a past, and this is my past. This is who I am. I'm not going to hide away from it all. But we have an amazing team here that's part of driving this program out and expanding it. And so I'm one of that team, and it's largely a woman-led team on the ground that's driving Akashinga across the continent now. I will say probably more than being a white male, but being a conservation organization that was looking to integrate women into the forefront of our strategy, that probably attracted a lot more attention or scrutiny of people that were looking for mistakes than anything else. And it's like there's someone hiding under every second rock waiting for something to go wrong, and then they would highlight that, whereas previously it wouldn't have been highlighted if we were just working with all male units. And that was something that we were ready for. We were ready to deal with. I won't say we were ready with all the answers, but we were willing to make the changes that were needed to make this program a success, not just operationally, but in terms of the cultural transformation that we as an organization had to go through and are still going through to this day. Having a third-party organization come in and independently audit us from a gender mainstreaming aspect, to look at the positions we have on our boards, in our management, and look at gender equality there, to look at our policies and procedures, and to look at any case that's ever raised, or complaint that's ever raised, or query that's ever raised, and make sure that that's dealt with in the most fastest and professional way possible. So that we can not only build out a best practice model that is so beneficial from an operational standpoint in tackling the social issues that then conservation becomes a byproduct of dealing with, but also that we have the rigidity as an organization to be able to go out and to be able to hand this to other organizations to say, hey, if you want to implement this model, it really works, but you also have to make these other changes. These also have to evolve. So that in itself has been, particularly for me, as I said, coming from the Ultimate Boys Club, I had never worked with women in an operational capacity. I built a career across 3 continents in training and deploying men into combat situations. Women never featured in that equation. So it was very new to me, and there was a lot of learning to do in a short space of time, and that learning is still taking place. There's a lot of training that's taking place for all of our teams at all different levels in regards to how we run a better organization, and that will never cease.
It's a great way of looking at it, I think, when we see, because I wasn't referring to people with genuine concerns when I asked that question. I was referring to people who were just troublemakers, which there tends to be a lot of. But
don't have fucking time for it, Dave.
Yeah.
The gentle art of not giving a fuck about people that have got shit to say, mate. If
exactly.
I sat there and worried about everyone that had something negative to say, or you mate, be going around in circles. Too busy cracking on with the work, mate.
But I do like the way you said that you've taken genuine criticism and used it as an opportunity to improve the organization. I think that's amazing, and I think that's what everyone should do with genuine criticism, right? And even if it's not genuine criticism, even if it's some troublemakers, but sometimes they have a point, right? Sometimes someone's a little asshole making a lot of trouble, but they have maybe 1 or 2 points. You're like, all right, cool, we're going to improve. But we're not going to give in to your BS. I think there's definitely you can take criticism and improve, but there's a lot of BS out there these days, and a lot of politics, identity politics, and like for people, especially for the white men. So it's important to, like you said, I agree with you, switch off to most of it. But whenever there is something that's legit, then okay, that's fair. I'll look into that. But there's a lot of noise, unfortunately.
Quite often, mate, they're not saying stuff that we don't know, we're not thinking about already. They're just bringing it, maybe helping us bring it back to the top of the pile. So, look, and any challenge if I've come to learn one thing in in my time in the military and time in building this organization with the team that we have. Any challenge is a blessing. And then once you get through that challenge, it's you're stronger as an individual, you're stronger as an organization. What I'm scared of is comfort, or the status quo, or not changing, or not being open to criticism. Because if you're perfect, or if you don't need to change, or you don't need to evolve, then that really is an issue.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of challenges, taking the tone down a little bit, just to warn anybody watching, this will be quite kind of, I don't know, potentially graphic description of some things. But you had a ranger go through something very, very challenging recently. Tango, who I've seen on your Instagram, I saw the GoFundMe for those who don't know. Tango was a ranger working in one of Damien's teams, and this is the kind of dangers you're dealing with. So he was I believe it was by the poachers, right? But long story short, he was trapped in a car and they set the car on fire. One of your rangers, was that confirmed that it was by people involved in poaching, or
it was
confirm that?
So, well, poaching is this particular operation was a rhino horn operation. And rhino horn, like elephant tusk, is another form of currency on the black market that organised crime syndicates will target and use, alongside drugs, guns, human trafficking, counterfeit currency. And so when you get involved with this line of work, it's not just about protecting animals, but you're also targeting and taking money away from organised crime, and that doesn't come without its threats and its challenges. I know I've had friends that have been killed, assassinated, colleagues, people that run organisations similar to what we do. Wow. The best defence I could have done and have achieved is be able to build a team that runs this organisation and makes each one of us is expendable. And there's probably almost 10 different people that could stand up in any media forum or political meeting or negotiation, high-level negotiation, and be able to represent the organisation. So, 5 years ago, we would have been described as a bus crash organisation. If Damien gets hit by a bus, then where's this thing going to go? But we're not like that anymore. In this particular case, you're referring to with Tango 5, one of our undercover operators. They'd conducted an operation. There'd already been a couple of arrests. The operation had finished, and he was actually on his way back to his house, and his car was run off the road. He got out and ran through the bushes, and he was tracked down. The guys intercepted him. He was brought back to his car. They took his shoelaces out of his shoes and they tied his hands to the steering wheel of the car, and then they trickled a little bit of petrol on him inside the vehicle, and then shut the door and put the rest of the tin where they covered the car. They set it on fire and they drove off. And now, while the outside of the car was burning, he managed to get one hand free. Now, bearing in mind we drive on the left-hand side of the road in Zimbabwe, so the driver sits on the right-hand side. So he had the hand closest to the window was free. And the windows then exploded from the heat. As they exploded, the petrol that was on him caught fire, but he managed to get out through one of the windows. But his left hand was still tied to the steering wheel. So he had the weight there trying to pull that left hand away while the fire burnt through that shoelace and sustained significant burns to around a third of his body. He was in under armed protection in a high dependency ward of intensive care unit for over 2 months. We had an outpouring of support from around the world that not only covered his medical bills, but the legal stuff that we had to cover off, the replacement for him in regards to operations, because the tempo of special investigations is so rapid and they're so successful in what they do. It not only makes them a target, but it drives a downturn in poaching across the entire region. And also now that Tango is back at work, retraining him into a more administrative role for the time being, based on the trauma that he's suffered from a physical and a mental standpoint. So it's a very challenging time for us, but also a very sort of a rallying time for us as an organisation to be able to, not only to see how everyone responded internally as a group, but externally as a global community. But yeah, it's we've been successful to now, and this investigation is ongoing. But there have been a couple of arrests that have been made, and that will continue. We will not stop. We're working very closely with the authorities in Zimbabwe, who we have a very good relationship with, to make sure that there's justice for Tango 5.
It's
and I
pretty
say his
incredible.
code name because I say his code name because he's an undercover operative.
It's pretty incredible, and it's a testament to the intensity of the people that you're working with, the passion they have. Because you say that he's already back at work and retraining. I mean, this only happened in May, right? This happened back in May. He's already back at work. After
he
that,
was in hospital, in his isolation ward, sending text messages with the one hand that works. He actually said it when one week he set up 2 successful ivory operations to arrest ivory poachers and the recovery of live pangolin as well. So he's
he's made of different stuff, mate. He's made of different stuff. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible amount of pain he must have been in, the amount of, mental and physical pain, and is still working hard. That's phenomenal, mate.
To hear the guy's screams when fresh bandages are being ripped out of and having to scrub back these burns. It's sort of it's hard to fathom, really, and that's the sort of level of dedication that you do have from these rangers. We sit almost office based or whatever it may be. What could be considered luxury, I suppose, for many. And that, while we sit here and have this conversation, there's rangers out there right now risking their life, to protect animals and protect nature, and not just on behalf of those animals, but on behalf of a local and an international, a global community.
They're incredible people, mate. And that's, as I said, they're made of something else, man. I don't know what it is, but not many of us are made of it, clearly. And you mentioned there, like, on behalf of the global community as well, that there are people all over the world that are absolutely behind you. But then I've come across quite a sizable number of people who are actually would say that, the anti-hunting and the anti-poaching, they're against that, as in they're pro-hunting, pro-poaching. And they come out with these different things. Normally it's something along the lines of it's money for the people, the local people. And the other thing that I hear a lot is conservation. Now, I think the argument that it's money for the people, I already think that can be dismissed. That's BS. People can make more money out of tourism, photo tourism, than they can make out of hunting tourism, because it's not like everybody goes hunting, but everybody wants a photo, right? But conservation, that side of things, I mean, that's your expertise, right? I mean, what is your take on these arguments where people say that, we need to hunt, it's good that people go out and hunt and kill animals because it's necessary for conservation. Have you come across that as a counter to what you're doing? I mean, obviously what you're doing is a different type of, you're anti, you're stopping the killing of different animals than what these people would normally be referring to. But yeah, just curious to get your take on that, and people who are like pro hunting and
but just to differentiate the two there. So you've got hunting, which is a legally sanctioned activity. So you'll have a hunting operator which has a lease on a reserve and a quota. So the government will set an amount of animals that can be hunted on that reserve, and the hunter will come across and hunt those animals and pay certain lease fees, and the hunting operator will then use that for some management costs, some community costs. That's different to poaching, which is the illegal taking of animals, usually from a subsistence standpoint to put food on the table, or from a commercial standpoint, which is to make money in varying levels. Whether people are just doing it to get by, or people are doing it to get it significantly ahead in a financial standpoint. So now, what we should hate more than hunting, for those out there that want to hate hunting, is the fact that as an international community, we have relied upon it as the only economic model to look after so much wilderness area for so long. And so if people want to say stop the hunting, you need to ask yourself the important question, and what? Okay, so I'm not a hunter. I used to be a hunter. I never hunted after Iraq. I know what it's like to be hunted. But what I hate more than the act of hunting and the ethics behind hunting is the fact that it is the only economic model to protect and support so many areas across the continent, or has been for so many decades. And people may not want to hear that. But if you wanna throw stones at hunting, then you've got to come up with an alternate model. You can't just say, "Oh, we're going to get rid of hunting," because then you end up in a position where these areas are left vacant or void. And we haven't, as an international community, been able to see the value in looking after these areas because of their environmental and biodiversity value. We've had to put a value on these animals to justify their existence, and that's the reality on the ground here. So we, as an organization, we wanted to look at hunting as an equation to be solved rather than an argument to be had. And when I spoke before about our portfolio of land reserves that we have in conjunction with local indigenous communities, all 8 of those reserves are former trophy. Okay, so these are areas that trophy hunting was traditionally used on that land as the economic model. You still with me, mate?
So it cut off. You were just explaining how those areas used to be trophy hunting areas, and then there were the economic models, and then it cut.
So hunting is failing across the continent for generally one of 3 reasons: reduced wildlife population, so there's less product to sell, tougher penalties, or regulations, tougher regulations around the export of certain trophies like elephant ivory from Zimbabwe to America, which made up more than 50% of the clientele. And then you've got a younger generation raised on social media and digital media that doesn't want to get on a plane anymore and fly across the world to shoot something. So what all this means is there's less animals to shoot, and there's less people that want to shoot them. Across Africa, there is twice as much land set aside under what's known as communal land trust or tribal land trust than there is all the national parks put together. Tribal land trust are the wilderness areas that communities have used hunting as their way to try and generate an income. So, I mean, hunting fails in one of these areas. Hunting is truly not a great partner for a non-profit organization. Okay, so you don't have like all these hunters out there with these non-profits trying to support it, saying, "Oh, let's try and protect the animals so people can come over and shoot them." It's generally been the hunting outfitters by themselves. So when hunting fails as an economic model, you have a blank canvas. The hunter moves out, and then the people will generally move in to use that land for agriculture or human settlement. Unless you have an organization like us, that we will put the same amount of money or better into your community as what hunting was doing. And we've been able to do that. The model that we are using, we can show on paper. We're putting the same amount into that community every 34 days as what trophy hunting was doing per annum. And that for us is only working with women at the center of the strategy. So
that's specifically what you were mentioning earlier. We were talking about specifically Africa, right? Hunting in Africa for that for that segment. So it's more, I mean, I've read a lot about this, and it is, it must be tough for you being out there though, and kind of, I mean, it's tough for all of us really, isn't it? And facing the reality that we don't want animals to go through that, but then currently for a lot of places it's not, there's not an alternative. As you were saying, there's no use screaming about it with no alternative, right? There's no use kind of shaming with no alternative. But in the West, do you hold that same opinion? I mean, do you know much about conservation over in the West as well? Because a lot of but like people across, I don't know, the United States or in England, places where I've seen people talk about this specifically, they make that same excuse, except they're making it over in, those kind of countries. They say, oh, if I don't go out and kill these animals, then it's conservation. That's why I go out with the gun and shoot deer. It's all about conservation. Do you think they also have a leg to stand on, the same as people in Africa do, or do you think it's a completely different thing?
So we now, as we continue through this COVID pandemic, you have millions of people dead, billions of people in lockdown. and with trillions of dollars in international deficit that we're going to have to make up in future generations because of the economic fallout of this situation. If we had just invested some of that in looking after nature in the first place, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. Now, I think we're going to get to a point very soon where people are going to realize the importance of biodiversity, the importance of nature, and where each species falls into that bigger picture, that we will start allocating money to protecting large open wilderness spaces, as opposed to saying, all right, if these animals don't pay for themselves, then they can't justify their existence. The Paris Climate Agreement, looking at reaching our global emission reductions, protecting nature and forests make up 30% of our ability to be able to reduce emissions as part of that agreement. So, I mean, as I said, we have this amazing self-regulatory system. We just need to start to respect it and acknowledge it as the system that it is and the role that it can play, and not say, oh, we have to hunt X amount of the animals to justify that it stays here. We need to realize we're not the main act on this planet. We're one of millions of species that ultimately do rise and become extinct, and we will become another one of those species at some point in time. It's the ball is now in our court as to how rapidly that happens, and the sooner we realize that we are not the main act, okay, we are part of a much bigger, much more intricate system on a planet that's been spinning for billions of years and has survived a lot worse than humankind.
Is this how you would, I mean, I was going to ask you at some point, but I think you just kind of answered the question. If you know, there's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of propaganda and lies that is anti-vegan, anti-animal rights. There's a lot of this stuff out there. I mean, is this how you go about convincing people? Is this how you would recommend, you know, if someone asked you, Damien, how do I convince people to give a shit? Is this how you'd recommend to talk about it? Like, you know, that we are not the main act, we're one, or is there something else you'd say to, you know, to give someone advice on how they can, you know, convince people to care about animals?
Yeah. You know, look, I mean, I was a hard case, you know, from where I came from to, where I consider myself to be now. You know, there's been a lot of evolution and a lot of reflection on bits of who I was and what I did that I didn't like. Now that was a long time to make that transition, and there was a lot of conversations had with a lot of people that had a lot of logical arguments to have with me, and I had a lot of what I considered to be logical responses. Ultimately, we are all going to respond in different ways to different messaging, and my message for people that are out there that are part of our movement and activists is to keep having your conversations and keep getting better at them, because a conversation you have today with someone may feel as though it's falling on deaf ears. But the important thing to remember is this: the truth is accumulative. And when you have that conversation, even though someone may hang shit on you, they may laugh at you, they may turn around and walk away from you. It may take that person a day, it may take them a decade. But that truth is adding up in their own head and their own conscience.
That's amazing, mate. It's a great way to look at it, and it's something I completely agree with you on. I think people get so upset when they try their best and people don't listen or ignore them, or worse, they tell them to go fuck themselves or something like that. But it all adds up, right? So, you know, every one of those, every single time you bring it up, even if they tell you to go fuck yourself, just, you know, just keep on going. Just go to the next one, you know, just move on. Next person. One day that person that told you to go fuck yourself will come back and say, actually, you were right. And you know, it might take, like you said, it might take a decade, right? It can happen. Yeah, it's happened to me a few times. I'm sure it's happened to you as well. Damien, how can people support you and what you're doing and your organization? How, if they want to like send, I don't know, what can they do to support you? Is it only monetary that they could support, or is there like volunteer programs? What can people do?
Yeah, look, I mean, we employ and empower and educate for the role as many people locally within the local communities that we work as possible. So funding from around the world to support that initiative and that scale up. Around 95% of our staff come from within 14 miles or 20 kilometres of the boundaries of the areas we protect. So it's very much a locally driven program. But we are a non-profit. So if people would like to contribute in any way, a little bit goes a long way. And the collective good of multiple people, it does add up. It accumulates. We have, people think, oh, I'm only giving $5 a month or $50 a month, whatever it may be. But if you have hundreds or thousands of people doing that, it makes a significant change in the lives of the animals and the people that we train and deploy to protect those animals. People want to have a look at our website, IAPF, International Anti-Poaching Foundation, IAPF.org. Jump on, have a look, have a read. But it's not just about who we are and what we do, but I think who we are as individuals, and what the changes we can make in our own lives, and the difference that can mean to others. It's may not be us as an organization you choose to support. It may be another organization focused on something much more local to you as a person where you're based, but find something and get behind something or be a part of something. And also start at home, start at the dinner table. The biggest changes can be made, right under our nose.
Couldn't agree more, mate. I really appreciate you coming on. It's been an inspirational talk with you, which I knew it would be. So I'm really thankful for that. And, for your time spent what you're doing, for your time spent doing conversations like this. And I know you're doing many of them right now. I know you actually just had a chat with Seb, right? Seb Alex, who's a friend of mine. So he says it went really well as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. It's great that you're spreading yourself pretty thin, but I appreciate it. You're putting the effort in and, getting out and about and getting this message out there, mate. It's really, really appreciated. Do you have anything you'd like to add that I missed? Anything you want to close on?
I think we're good, mate. I think and I'm just grateful to be on here, and for your listeners. I know there's a lot of activists out there and people that are devoted to the cause and making the world a better place for others. So thank you all very much. Thank you, David, for having me on today, mate. And I'll chat to you next time.
All right, mate. Thanks a lot. See ya.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I'll just quickly do a bit of housekeeping before we finish the stream. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Really appreciate your time. And if you want to support Damien's work, you can get the link that Annie's just posted in the comments there. It's also in the description, the IAPF.org, I believe it was. It's in the description, so you can go check it out and support Damien's organization, support those amazing teams of rangers, anti-poaching rangers, and help them keep on doing the work they're doing. And if you're interested in also accessing some exclusive content from myself, we are doing some more of that right now. You can check that out on the Patreon, patreon.com/David Rams. That's the way you can support me, and also the way you can, as I said, access to that exclusive content. So we've got some cool stuff coming up, so do check that out as well. We will be back live again tomorrow for the Face the Facts Friday, and then again on Sunday for an interesting live stream where an ex-vegan's going to come on, somebody I've debated before, and he's actually now plant-based. So he's done a turnaround. We're going to find out what happened. I'm going to interview him. We'll see what's going on, so don't miss that. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and we'll see you in tomorrow's stream.